The desert had always been a place of silence, with endless stretches of sand and the sun rising like fire every morning. People avoided the valley at the center of the desert, for they believed it carried whispers of old curses. But Amir, a young scholar with a curious heart, did not believe in such fears. He had spent years studying old maps and listening to travelers' tales. One day, while looking at a faded parchment, he noticed drawings of a hidden tomb deep within the valley. The drawings spoke of a king who had ruled thousands of years ago, a king who was said to have hidden his gold in a sealed crypt so no enemy could take it. Amir could not resist the call of history. He gathered a group of local diggers and offered them coins for their work, though the villagers warned him of bad omens. The promise of payment and the fire of discovery drew some of them to his side. Together, they carried tools, water jars, and torches and set out toward the valley. The journey was not easy. The sand burned their feet during the day, and the nights were bitter cold. Yet Amir's determination guided them forward. After days of searching, one of the diggers shouted as his shovel struck stone beneath the sand. The men cleared the area, their hands brushing away layers of dust. Slowly, the shape of a carved doorway appeared, half buried but still standing firm after countless centuries. The stone was massive, with strange symbols etched across it. Amir's heart raced as he traced his fingers over the markings. He could not understand all of them, but he recognized the sign of a crown, the mark of a king. The men hesitated. One whispered that breaking the doorway would invite the anger of spirits. Another muttered that no man should disturb what had been sealed for so long. But Amir calmed them with steady words. He told them this was not a place of curses but of history, and that they would be remembered as the first to bring the king's secrets back to light. His confidence gave the men courage, and they began their work. They hammered at the edges of the doorway, pulling away stones that had sealed it for ages. Hours passed, and sweat poured down their faces as dust filled the air. At last, with a heavy groan, the final block slid away, and darkness opened before them. The air that escaped was dry and heavy, carrying the scent of centuries. Amir lit a torch and stepped inside, the others following close behind. What they saw made their eyes widen with disbelief. The chamber was vast, its walls covered in faded paintings of battles, chariots, and golden crowns. In the center stood stone chests, their lids slightly open, and inside them gleamed treasure. Gold masked with calm faces, necklaces studded with jewels, and coins that shone even in the dim light of the torch. The men gasped, their voices trembling as they whispered about the wealth. Before them, Amir's hand shook as he picked up one of the coins. It was heavier than he expected, its surface marked with the king's image. He imagined how powerful the ruler must have been, commanding riches beyond measure. He thought of the stories he had read, of wars fought for power, of kings who sought to hide their wealth from enemies. This discovery was not just treasure. It was history, and Amir knew it would change everything. The diggers, however, thought only of the gold. Their eyes shone with greed as they whispered among themselves. But Amir reminded them that the treasure must be recorded and studied, not stolen. He warned them that if word spread too quickly, bandits would come, and all their work would be for nothing. The men nodded reluctantly, though some still glanced at the gold with longing. As the sun dipped low, the group left the crypt and sealed the entrance with planks of wood to keep it safe. Until the morning, Amir wrote notes by candlelight in his small tent. He described the symbols, the paintings, and the treasure with as much detail as his hand could capture. His heart was full of excitement. He dreamed of presenting his findings to scholars in the city, of writing books that would make his name remembered for centuries. Meanwhile, the villagers gathered outside the camp, curious about the discovery. Amir allowed them to look at a few small artifacts, but he kept the larger treasures hidden inside the crypt. The villagers whispered of curses and the wrath of kings. Some warned Amir to leave the treasure untouched, for it was not meant for mortal hands. Amir smiled at their fears, yet deep inside he felt a strange unease. He could not explain why the paintings on the wall seemed to watch him, or why the symbols carried a weight he could not understand. That night, the camp was filled with noise. Fires burned, Drums were struck, and people danced in celebration of the discovery. The diggers ate their fill, proud of their work, while Amir sat quietly, lost in thought. He gazed at the stars above, wondering if the king who had hidden his gold was also watching from beyond time. Before sleep, Amir checked on the crypt one last time. Guards stood watch, their spears in hand. He instructed them not to let anyone near the entrance until morning. The guards nodded firmly, promising to protect it with their lives, satisfied. Amir returned to his tent and closed his eyes, though dreams of gold and crowns filled his mind. The valley grew silent once the fires died down. The wind blew softly, carrying grains of sand across the ground. The torches near the crypt flickered and hissed. The guards stood still, though unease filled their hearts as shadows shifted on the walls. Amir slept peacefully, unaware that by morning, the treasure that had taken centuries to remain hidden would no longer be there. What they had uncovered was not only a crypt, but also a mystery far deeper than any of them could imagine. The morning sun rose slowly over the desert valley, painting the sand with shades of gold and orange. Birds chirped in the distance, and a gentle wind carried the dry scent of the earth. The villagers and diggers who had gathered near Amir's camp began their day with excitement. Everyone expected to see the treasure again, to gaze upon the golden masks, the coins, and the necklaces that had made their hearts beat faster the day before. Amir woke early, rubbing his eyes and stretching. He walked toward the crypt, eager to inspect the treasure and plan the next steps for its study. The guard stood silently by the entrance, as he had instructed the night before. The first light of morning reflected on the stone doorway, revealing its carvings in sharper detail. Amir felt a thrill in his chest. He knew today would be important. He called to the guards to open the crypt. One guard stepped forward and pressed his hand against the heavy stone. Slowly, carefully, he pushed the wooden planks that Amir had placed over the entrance. The sound of wood scraping against stone echoed through the valley. Then the guard stepped back and motioned for Amir to enter first. Amir lifted his torch and walked inside. His footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. His eyes widened immediately. The gold and masks, necklaces, and coins were gone. Every chest was empty. The room that had seemed so full of riches yesterday now looked hollow and strange. Dust floated in the air, but there were no marks of disturbance. The seals were still intact. Nothing had been broken. Amir froze. His mind raced as he tried to understand what had happened. He checked the corners of the room, the walls, and even the ceiling. Nothing. It was as if the treasure had vanished into thin air. The guards looked at each other nervously, unable to speak. One of them whispered, "How is this possible?" The doors were sealed. Outside, the villagers began to gather as news spread. They gasped when they saw Amir emerge from the crypt, his face pale and tense. Amir held up his hand and asked them to remain calm. He explained that no one had broken in, that the doors were still sealed. The villagers murmured, afraid and confused. Some whispered about curses. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Amir tried to think logically. He examined the seals again, running his fingers over the carved symbols. They were exactly as he had left them. No cracks, no scratches, no signs of entry. The treasures had vanished without a trace. He knelt to examine the ground. The sand outside the crypt was smooth, untouched. There were no footprints except those of the guards and his team. Fear began to rise in the villagers. They said the spirits of the king had taken the gold. Others believed the treasures were never meant to be found by living men. Amir listened to their words, but he did not believe in spirits. He had always relied on reason, on evidence, and he refused to give up. He called his diggers and helpers to gather around. "We will find answers," Amir said firmly. "There must be a reason. We will not leave until we understand this mystery." The men nodded. Though some looked frightened, they had expected wealth, not a vanished treasure. Amir's words gave them courage, even as their hearts pounded with fear. Amir spent hours inspecting the crypt. He looked at the walls carefully and noticed strange carvings he had not seen before. Some were symbols that seemed like warnings. Others were small figures, as if they were telling a story. He traced them with his fingers and felt a shiver run through him. He could not read all the symbols, but he sensed that the king had left a message. Perhaps these markings held a clue to why the treasure disappeared. The villagers watched from outside as Amir worked. Some left, unable to bear the fear. Others stayed quietly, curious and anxious. By midday, Amir decided to take a small group into the village archives to see if old records mention anything like this. Perhaps ancient scribes had written warnings about the treasure. He hoped that history could explain what logic could not. Meanwhile, the guards remained by the crypt. They whispered among themselves, sharing rumors about curses and spirits. One guard said he had dreamed of shadows moving in the chamber the night before. Another claimed he heard faint whispers. Though no one else had, fear filled their hearts, and they tightened their grip on their spears. Amir had to remind them to stay calm. As the day progressed, Amir returned to the camp. He spoke to the villagers, explaining that they must be patient and careful. He showed them the carvings and asked them to help record the details. Some were willing, though their hands shook with anxiety. Amir encouraged them to focus on history, not treasure, and slowly their fear turned to curiosity. That evening, the wind in the valley grew stronger. Sand swirled around the camp, and shadows moved strangely across the ground. Amir lit lanterns and checked the crypt once more. It was empty, silent, and still. The air was thick, as if holding secrets from long ago. Amir's mind was full of questions. How could gold disappear from a sealed chamber? Who or what could move it without leaving a trace? The villagers gathered around a fire, speaking in hushed tones. Some said the king's spirit was protecting the treasure. Others believed that it had been hidden by secret guardians. Amir listened quietly, thinking about every possibility. He knew that this mystery was larger than any one person. Perhaps the king had prepared a trap, or perhaps the treasure had been taken in ways no one could understand. Amir could not sleep that night. He sat outside his tent, looking at the stars and thinking of the vanished gold. He wrote notes in his journal, recording everything he had seen and heard. His mind worked quickly, trying to piece together the puzzle. The desert was silent except for the wind, and for the first time, Amir felt that history itself was watching him. By dawn, Amir decided that he could not wait. He would seek answers beyond the village, beyond the desert. He would travel to towns and libraries, searching for any record of the king, the crypt, or the vanished gold. The mystery had begun, and Amir knew that the journey ahead would test his courage, his wisdom, and his determination. The villagers remained behind, uncertain and fearful. The story of the vanished treasure spread quickly, filling hearts with wonder and worry. Everyone agreed that the valley held secrets beyond human understanding. Amir prepared for his journey, determined to uncover the truth. The gold and treasure might be gone, but the mystery had only just begun. The desert was quiet as Amir packed his small satchel with maps, notebooks, and a few provisions. The vanished treasure weighed heavily on his mind. He had always believed that every mystery had an answer, but the disappearance of the gold from the sealed crypt seemed impossible. Even the guards were puzzled, unable to explain how the treasure had moved without breaking the seals or leaving any signs. Amir knew that he had to find clues that others had missed. Before leaving the village, Amir returned to the crypt one last time. The morning light poured across the stone floor, casting long shadows on the walls. He examined the carvings closely. There were small figures etched into the stone that he had not noticed before. They looked like people in motion, dragging something heavy. Some symbols resembled animals or strange tools. Amir traced each marking carefully with his fingers. He felt a strange chill, as if the carvings themselves were speaking to him. Amir studied the walls for hours. He discovered faint scratches near the edges of the floor. They were small, almost invisible, but they suggested movement. He wondered if they had been made centuries ago or very recently. The patterns were irregular, like someone had tried to move something very carefully. Amir took detailed notes, sketching every symbol and marking in his notebook. He felt a sense of both fear and excitement. He was getting closer to understanding what had happened. The villagers watched from a distance. Some whispered to each other about the vanished gold. Others warned Amir to leave the crypt alone, claiming that the spirits of the king were angry. One old man, with silver hair and wrinkled hands, approached Amir and spoke in a low voice. "Young man, the gold is not for living eyes. Those who seek it invite danger." Amir listened carefully, though he did not believe in curses. He respected the old man's words, knowing that fear could sometimes hold truths hidden in legend. Amir decided to explore the surrounding valley for signs of hidden passages. He climbed over rocks and examined the sand for footprints. Most of the ground was untouched, smooth from the wind, but he noticed a series of small depressions near a cluster of stones. The shape suggested that something heavy had been dragged across the sand. Amir marked the spots on his map. He wondered if these tracks had been left recently or if they were ancient paths that led somewhere beyond the valley. That evening, Amir returned to the village and shared his findings with a few trusted villagers. He explained the carvings, the scratches, and the depressions in the sand. Some listened with curiosity, others with fear. Amir knew he could not solve the mystery alone. He needed more knowledge, more history, and more insight into the king who had built the crypt. He decided that his next step would be to visit the nearest town to search old records and scrolls that might provide answers. Before leaving, Amir visited the old man again. "Can you tell me more about the king's guards?" he asked. The old man paused, then nodded slowly. The king had a secret order. They were sworn to protect his treasures even after death. Only those who understood the ancient ways could enter the chambers safely. Many tried and failed. Some were never seen again. Amir listened intently. The words gave him both fear and hope. Perhaps the gold had not vanished by accident. Perhaps it had been moved by guardians who still followed the king's orders. Amir set out early the next morning. The road to the town was long, crossing hills and dry riverbeds. He traveled on foot and by horse, stopping only to rest and eat. His mind was full of questions. Who could have moved the gold without leaving a trace? What secret order protected the treasure? And why had the king gone to such lengths to hide it? Every step brought him closer to answers, though he knew the journey would not be easy. When Amir arrived in the town, he went straight to the archives. The building was old, with stone walls and dusty shelves. Scrolls and manuscripts filled every corner. Scholars worked quietly, reading and copying texts. Amir introduced himself and explained his mission. The archivist allowed him to search the collections, though many were skeptical of a young man from a desert village, claiming to have found a vanished treasure. Amir spent hours reading the scrolls. He discovered accounts of the king's rule, his battles, and the wealth he had accumulated. Some scrolls mentioned a secret order called the Watchers of the Gold. They were described as guardians who could move unseen and protect the treasure from thieves. One scroll told the story of a young scholar who had tried to steal from the king's crypt and was never found again. Amir felt a chill. The scroll confirmed what the old man had said. The treasure was not meant for ordinary hands. Amir also found a map that showed hidden tunnels and chambers beneath the valley. Some passages led to empty rooms, others to small platforms marked with symbols similar to those he had seen in the crypt. He realized that the king had built a network of secret pathways to protect the treasure. Moving the gold might have been part of a carefully planned system that only the Watchers could use. Amir copied the map and studied it carefully. He knew that understanding these passages would be key to solving the mystery. That night, Amir stayed in the town. He reviewed his notes and the maps he had found. He could not stop thinking about the vanished gold. He imagined the treasures hidden in chambers unknown, waiting for someone who understood the secrets. He felt a sense of purpose. This was not only about wealth, it was about history, knowledge, and the legacy of a king who had planned for centuries ahead. Amir slept lightly, dreaming of the crypt and the hidden passages. In his dreams, he saw shadows moving silently, carrying golden chests along winding tunnels. The images were vivid, almost real. When he woke, he knew that the first clues he had found, the carvings, the tracks, and the old scrolls were only the beginning. The treasure was not lost. It had been taken, moved, or hidden by forces Amir did not yet fully understand. By morning, Amir was ready to return to the valley. He planned to follow the clues he had gathered, to explore the hidden passages, and to uncover the truth behind the vanished treasure. He felt both fear and excitement. The mystery of the gold had grown larger, but Amir knew that with patience, careful observation, and courage, he could discover its secrets. The journey was just beginning. Amir returned to the town early in the morning, his mind still filled with questions about the vanished gold. He carried the sketches of the carvings and the map of hidden tunnels he had copied the day before. The archives seemed quieter now, as if they were holding their breath for the secrets to be revealed. He greeted the archivist and asked for permission to study the oldest scrolls in the collection. After some hesitation, they agreed. The scrolls were fragile and yellow with age. Their edges crumbled easily when touched. Amir handled them with care, reading every word slowly. The writings described the king who had built the crypt and hidden the gold. He learned that the king had fought many battles to protect his kingdom, and that he valued wisdom more than wealth. The treasure had been collected not only to display power, but also to support the kingdom in times of great need. Amir found descriptions of a secret order, called the Watchers of the Gold. They were said to be loyal men and women who pledged to protect the king's treasure, even after his death. The scrolls explained that the Watchers had special knowledge of hidden passages, traps, and symbols. Only they could safely move or hide the gold when danger approached. The writings suggested that the treasure could vanish from sight if disturbed by the unworthy. Amir's heart raced. Could the Watchers have moved the treasure again? Some scrolls contained riddles and symbols similar to those he had seen in the crypt. One scroll described a ritual of protection, stating that gold must be guarded by shadows unseen. Another described platforms in underground chambers that could be opened only by those who understood the signs. Amir realized that the king had planned everything in detail. The treasure had been designed to move, to hide, and to protect itself. From thieves. Amir took careful notes, copying each symbol into his notebook. He compared them to the carvings in the crypt and discovered that they matched almost exactly. The symbols indicated paths, traps, and instructions for moving the gold. It became clear to Amir that the treasure's disappearance was not random. Someone, or something, had followed these ancient rules to move the gold safely. He continued reading, discovering that the Watchers had used secret signals to communicate. Certain markings in the desert, the placement of stones, and even the positions of carvings could convey instructions to others who understood the code. Amir traced these connections on his map. He began to see a pattern. The hidden passages, the carved symbols, and the vanished treasure were all part of a carefully planned system. Amir spent the entire day in the archives. He copied maps, sketched symbols, and recorded every detail. He realized that solving the mystery would require both knowledge and patience. The treasure had been designed to test intelligence and courage. Only those who could think like the king and the Watchers would be able to find it. Amir felt a mixture of excitement and responsibility. He understood that he was part of a story that had begun centuries ago. As the sun set, Amir left the archives with heavy scrolls and maps in his bag. The streets of the town were quiet, the marketplace already empty. He walked slowly, thinking about the lessons he had learned from the old records. The treasure was not just gold, it was a key to understanding the past. Its disappearance was a message, a challenge left by the king and his Watchers. Amir knew he must be careful, thoughtful, and patient if he wished to succeed. That night, Amir sat outside his inn, studying the maps under the light of a small lantern. He noticed symbols on the map that seemed to match formations of rocks in the desert valley. Near the crypt, he realized that the Watchers might have created paths that were hidden in plain sight. The treasure could have been moved along these paths, invisible to anyone who did not understand the code. Amir's mind raced with possibilities. He felt both awe and determination. Amir decided that he could not act alone. He needed guidance from someone who understood the desert, its secrets, and the old ways. He remembered the stories of travelers who had wandered near the valley and claimed to have seen strange lights at night. Perhaps one of them had knowledge of the Watchers. Amir made a plan to speak with these travelers and learn what they knew. He believed that combining the ancient records with current knowledge would bring him closer to the vanished treasure. Before leaving the town, Amir visited the archives one last time. He reviewed his notes and maps, making sure he had copied every detail correctly. He spoke with the archivist, who warned him to be careful. Some mysteries are older than men, one said. They watch those who seek them. Wisdom is your best guide. Amir nodded, grateful for their advice. He knew that the journey ahead would test not only his intelligence, but also his courage and patience. Amir returned to the desert valley. With renewed determination, the wind blew across the sand, carrying the familiar scent of the desert. He felt a strange connection to the place, as if the land itself was guiding him. He studied the rocks, the sand, and the shadows, comparing them to the maps and symbols he had discovered. Slowly, a pattern began to emerge. Hidden passages, carved platforms, and secret pathways all seemed to form a network leading to a destination that had remained unknown for centuries. Amir realized that the treasure's disappearance was not a threat but a challenge. The king and the watchers had designed it so that only a careful, patient, and intelligent seeker could find it. Every symbol, every mark, and every hidden path was part of a plan. Amir felt both respect and excitement. He was no longer just a scholar. He had become part of a story that spanned centuries. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Amir made camp near the valley. He reviewed his notes and maps again, planning his next move. The mystery of the vanished gold had grown deeper, but Amir felt closer to understanding it. He knew that the treasure was not lost. It had only been moved according to rules that few could understand. With patience, observation, and courage, Amir believed he could follow the path of the watchers and uncover the secrets hidden beneath the desert sands. As night fell, the valley grew quiet. The stars shone brightly, and the wind whispered softly. Across the dunes, Amir sat by his fire, thinking about the king, the watchers, and the treasure. He knew that his journey was only beginning. The clues in the old records had given him direction, but many challenges remained. The vanished gold was a mystery, a puzzle designed by those who had lived centuries before. Amir felt ready to follow the trail, confident that history and wisdom would guide him to the truth. Amir traveled through the desert with his maps and notes carefully packed in his satchel. The sun burned high in the sky, and the sand reflected its heat. He rode a sturdy horse, stopping occasionally to rest and drink water from the small flasks he carried. The desert was quiet, filled only with the sound of the wind moving the sand across the dunes. Amir's mind was alive with questions. The vanished treasure haunted him. Who had moved it? How could it disappear from a sealed crypt without leaving a trace? As he crossed a narrow valley, he noticed a figure in the distance. At first, he thought it might be a mirage, a trick of the heat. But as he drew closer, he saw a man walking carefully over the rocks. The stranger carried a long staff and a small pack. His clothing was worn but clean, and his eyes were sharp and attentive. Amir slowed his horse and called out a greeting. The man stopped and looked directly at him. His face was calm but serious, and his eyes seemed to hold knowledge beyond ordinary understanding. "My name is Amir," he said. "I am searching for a hidden treasure in the valley ahead. Perhaps you have traveled this desert before." The stranger nodded. "I have walked these sands for many years. I know places that few men know. I also know of the crypt and the gold that vanished from it." Amir's heart raced. He had hoped to meet someone who understood the mystery. And here was a man claiming knowledge of the vanished treasure. The stranger introduced himself as Omar. He said that his ancestors had served as watchers, guarding the king's treasures long ago. He explained that the gold was never meant for ordinary people. Only those who understood the ancient rules, the paths, and the symbols could reach it safely. "The treasure walks with shadows when disturbed," Omar said quietly. "It is moved not by thieves, but by guardians who protect it from eyes that do not see clearly." Amir listened carefully. He had read about the watchers in old scrolls, but meeting someone who claimed to belong to their line was extraordinary. He asked Omar many questions. "Can you tell me how the gold was moved? Was it hidden? Or did someone take it?" Omar shook his head. The gold cannot be taken by ordinary hands. It moves according to rules that few understand. If you follow the signs, the carvings, and the symbols, you may find it, but you must be careful. The desert tests patience, courage, and intelligence. Amir felt both fear and hope. The gold had not vanished randomly. It had been moved according to ancient plans. The Watchers were still part of the story, guiding the treasure across hidden paths, even centuries after the king had died. Amir realized that the crypt, the carvings, and the vanished treasure were all part of a carefully designed challenge, waiting for someone worthy to solve it. Omar agreed to accompany Amir back toward the valley. He moved silently across the sand, scanning the ground for signs that others might miss. Amir noticed that Omar's eyes seemed to detect small changes in the desert, like a breeze shifting grains of sand or faint impressions left long ago. The man seemed to understand the desert in a way Amir could not. He had knowledge not only of the land, but also of the secrets hidden within it. As they approached the valley, Omar pointed out subtle markers that indicated hidden paths. Stones were placed in unusual positions. The shadows of rocks at certain times of the day fell in ways that created arrows pointing to directions. These are signs left by the Watchers, Omar explained. If you follow them carefully, you will see the paths to the gold. But if you hurry or ignore them, you may lose your way forever. Amir studied every mark carefully. He felt a thrill of discovery. The signs confirmed what he had learned from the scrolls and the carvings in the crypt. The gold was not stolen. It was hidden and moved according to rules that few understood. The Watchers were still guiding it. Even now, they reached the edge of the valley as the sun began to set. Omar paused and pointed to a line of small rocks partially buried in the sand. "Follow these," he said. They marked the path to the first hidden platform. The gold may have passed through there. Be patient and watch the signs carefully. Amir nodded, his heart pounding. He followed the line of rocks, examining every symbol and mark along the way. The desert seemed alive, each grain of sand and each shadow telling a story. He realized that the king had designed the gold's protection not only with walls and doors, but also with nature itself. The treasure was hidden in a system that used both human and natural intelligence to remain safe. Night fell, and the desert grew cold. Omar set up a small fire, and they rested. He shared stories of the Watchers and their duty to protect the king's treasures. Amir listened closely, learning about the rituals, the hidden passages, and the careful movements of the gold over the centuries. Every detail deepened his understanding. The vanished treasure was not a simple mystery. It was a puzzle that tested wisdom, patience, and courage. Amir realized that the journey was no longer just out finding gold. It was about uncovering history, understanding the strategies of the king, and following the path of those who had guarded the treasure before him. He felt a deep respect for the Watchers and for the intelligence behind the hidden paths. The desert had become a teacher, and every step brought him closer to solving the mystery. The next morning, Omar led Amir to a small hidden platform partially covered by sand. Symbols etched into the stone matched those Amir had seen in the crypt, and on the maps, the platform had faint scratches, as if something heavy had been moved across it. Amir knelt and studied the marks, realizing that the treasure had indeed passed this way. The gold had been moved carefully, without disturbing the seals of the crypt or leaving obvious signs. Amir felt both excitement and determination. He knew that he was following the correct path. The gold had not vanished permanently. It had only been hidden according to rules designed by the king and the Watchers. With Omar's guidance, Amir felt ready to continue the journey, confident that patience, observation, and respect for the ancient ways would lead him to the treasure. The sun rose higher in the sky, casting light across the valley. Amir and Omar continued to follow the signs, each step bringing them closer to the next hidden platform. The desert was no longer empty or silent. It was alive with history, symbols, and paths waiting to be discovered. Amir realized that the story of the vanished treasure was far larger than he had imagined. It was not only a test of courage, but also a lesson in wisdom, patience, and understanding. As they moved through the desert, Amir felt a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. The mystery of the vanished gold was no longer a frightening puzzle. It had become a challenge, a journey, and a connection to history that he would remember forever. With Omar at his side, Amir knew that the next steps of the journey would reveal secrets even older and more remarkable than the crypt itself. The desert sun rose slowly, painting the valley in soft shades of gold. Amir and Omar continued their careful journey, following the faint markers and hidden signs that indicated the path of the vanished gold. Every step required attention. The displaced foot could obscure a small mark or overlook a clue. Amir had learned to trust his eyes and his instincts, but he also relied heavily on Omar, whose knowledge of the desert seemed almost magical. As they approached a cluster of large rocks near the edge of the valley, Amir noticed a faint air current coming from a narrow gap between the stones. It was almost invisible, but the movement of the sand made it clear that the air was escaping from somewhere below. Amir paused, kneeling to examine the ground. He brushed aside sand and small pebbles and noticed an unusual depression. The gap appeared to lead downward. Omar examined it closely and nodded. "This is one of the hidden entrances," he said. "The Watchers used passages like this to move the treasure safely." Amir's heart pounded. He had hoped to find a clue, but this discovery was far greater than he had imagined. He felt a mixture of fear and excitement. He realized that this passage could lead to the gold itself, or at least to the secret chambers where it had been stored. He instructed Omar to hold the horse while he examined the entrance more carefully. The gap was small but wide enough to crawl through. The air that escaped smelled old, like stone that had not seen sunlight for centuries. Lighting his torch, Amir began to crawl into the narrow passage. The walls were rough and close, but solid. Every movement kicked up dust that floated in the beam of the torch. Omar followed cautiously. Carrying another light, the passage sloped downward gently. As they moved deeper underground, the air grew cooler, carrying the faint scent of earth and stone. Amir felt a shiver of excitement. They were following a path designed centuries ago, a path that no ordinary person would have noticed. After crawling for some time, Amir noticed faint drag marks on the stone floor. The marks were irregular, but it was clear that something heavy had been moved along this path. He studied them carefully. The scratches matched the patterns he had seen in the crypt and on the hidden platform outside. This was proof that the gold had traveled this way. He traced the marks with his hand, imagining the chest of gold being carried carefully through the narrow passage. The passage opened into a larger chamber. Torches mounted in small alcoves illuminated the space. The walls were covered with the same symbols Amir had studied in the crypt and in the scrolls. Platforms of stone were placed around the chamber, some raised slightly above the floor. The air was cool and still, but there was a faint echo of movement, as if the chamber itself remembered the footsteps of those who had passed through it. Before Amir stepped carefully, examining the walls and the platforms. He noticed more drag marks leading toward a central area. The marks were fresh enough to be visible in the torchlight. Though there was no sign of anyone present, it was clear that the treasure had been moved recently. Yet no one had entered the chamber from the outside. Omar studied the markings closely. "The Watchers' work is clever," he said. "They can move the treasure without anyone seeing. Every mark is intentional, every path planned." Amir felt a thrill of discovery. The gold had not vanished by accident. It had been moved according to a carefully designed system. The king and his Watchers had ensured that the treasure could disappear when necessary, protecting it from thieves and intruders. Amir realized that every clue he had found, the carvings in the crypt, the hidden platforms, the drag marks, was part of a single, brilliant plan. They followed the drag marks toward the center of the chamber. There, Amir noticed a raised stone platform with symbols carved into it. The platform was empty, but the marks suggested that chests of gold had rested there. He examined the symbols carefully, tracing them with his fingers. They indicated instructions for moving the treasure further along the passage. Amir realized that the platform acted as a checkpoint. The treasure had passed through this chamber and continued along another hidden path. Omar pointed to a faint lining the floor that led to a narrow stairway carved into the rock. The stairway descended further into darkness. The treasures moved carefully from one chamber to another, he explained. Each step is planned, each symbol followed. Only those who understand the signs can move it safely. Amir nodded, understanding the complexity of the Watcher's design. Every movement of the gold was guided by knowledge, patience, and skill. Amir and Omar descended the stairway, following the faint symbols along the walls. The chamber below was smaller, but perfectly aligned with the upper passage. Drag marks continued, suggesting that heavy chests had been carried carefully down the stairs. The air was cooler and smelled faintly of stone and dust. The chamber was empty, but the signs left behind confirmed that the gold had passed through this place. Amir studied every mark, every symbol, feeling the weight of centuries in his hands. He realized that the treasure had been moved without breaking any seals, without leaving obvious footprints, and without attracting attention. The Watchers had created a system that allowed the gold to vanish from view whenever necessary. It was a puzzle designed to protect the treasure forever. Amir felt a deep respect for the intelligence and skill behind it. The king and his guardians had created something far beyond ordinary human understanding. Amir and Omar explored the chamber further, finding more platforms and symbols. Each platform had marks indicating movement and placement of heavy objects. Amir traced every symbol in his notebook, comparing them with the ones in the crypt and the scrolls. He realized that the gold had followed a precise route through the hidden passages, a route that only those who could read the signs would know. Every clue he had gathered so far now fit into a larger picture. As they prepared to leave the chamber and continue deeper underground, Omar turned to Amir. "You are learning to see as the Watchers saw," he said. "The treasure is not lost. It moves according to rules, and it waits for those who understand them." Amir nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and determination. He knew that the next steps would bring him even closer to discovering the vanished gold. But he also understood that patience and careful observation were essential. The passage continued downward, winding through the rock like a hidden river. Drag marks, symbols, and faint platforms guided their way. Amir followed each clue with care, his mind racing with anticipation. The treasure had been moved with skill and intelligence, and he was finally beginning to understand the brilliance of the Watcher's system. By the time they emerged from the narrow passage into another chamber, Amir realized that he was standing at the heart of the treasure's secret path. Every clue, every symbol, and every hidden platform had led him here. The gold had not vanished permanently. It had been moved according to rules that only the Watchers could follow. Amir felt a sense of awe. The mystery of the vanished treasure was no longer impossible. It was a challenge that he could now hope to solve. The chamber was quiet, illuminated only by the soft glow of Amir and Omar's torches. The air was cool and smelled faintly of stone and dust. Amir studied the walls carefully, tracing every symbol he had recorded from the crypt, the hidden platforms, and the scrolls. He felt a deep sense of connection to the king and the Watchers. Every mark, every carving, and every path was part of a system designed to protect the treasure. The vanished gold was not lost. It had only been moved along a route meant to test patience, intelligence, and courage. Omar pointed to the far side of the chamber. "The final platform is there," he said. "If the signs are correct, the treasure has rested on it. The path ahead will reveal its resting place." Amir stepped forward carefully, examining the stone floor for the faint scratches that marked the gold's journey. He noticed a small depression in the stone, hidden beneath dust and shadows. It matched the pattern from the crypt and the previous chambers. Amir's heart raced. They were close. He followed the line of symbols across the chamber, tracing each mark with his torch. The walls themselves seemed to guide him. Some symbols indicated directions. Others showed weight or placement. Amir realized that the Watchers had used not only logic, but also artistry to encode their instructions. Every detail mattered. He felt a growing respect for the intelligence behind the hidden passages. The treasure was protected not by locks or doors, but by knowledge and observation. At the end of the chamber, Amir noticed a small alcove concealed by stone blocks. The alcove was narrow and low, but it contained a faint outline of heavy chests. He knelt and brushed away the dust, revealing carved handles and hinges that had been hidden for centuries. The gold had rested here. The chest covers were engraved with symbols identical to those in the crypt. Amir understood that the alcove was the treasure's resting place. When it was not being moved along the hidden paths, Omar smiled quietly. "The Watchers moved the gold to protect it," he said. "Only those who can read the signs and follow the paths are worthy to see it. The treasure waits for the careful and patient." Amir felt a mixture of awe and excitement. They had uncovered proof of the vanished gold, evidence that the treasure had not disappeared into thin air. It had been moved, preserved, and protected for centuries according to a careful plan. Amir lifted the lid of one chest slowly. The light of the torches reflected on gold coins, necklaces, and ceremonial masks. Each piece was perfectly preserved. Untouched by time, the coins shimmered, and the intricate carvings on the masks seemed alive under the torchlight. Amir reached out and ran his fingers across the treasure, careful not to disturb it more than necessary. The vanished gold was real, and it was more magnificent than he had imagined. Omar watched silently, nodding with approval. "This is the work of the Watchers and the king. The treasure is meant to reward wisdom, not greed. You have followed the path and earned the right to see it." Amir felt a deep respect for the history of the kingdom, the intelligence of the Watchers, and the care with which the treasure had been preserved. It was more than gold. It was a testament to planning, patience, and knowledge. Amir examined the surrounding chamber carefully. He noticed additional symbols carved into the walls that indicated the next steps. If the treasure needed to be moved, some platforms could be shifted, and hidden passages could be opened using precise instructions. Every movement of the gold was designed to leave no trace for those who did not understand the system. Amir realized that the king's plan had succeeded perfectly. The treasure had vanished from the sealed crypt, just as intended, until someone worthy followed the correct path. He turned to Omar and said, "The gold is safe, preserved, and guided by the Watchers. We could take it, but it seems the king wanted it to remain hidden, revealed only to those who understand." Omar nodded. "Exactly. The treasure is not for display or wealth. It is for knowledge, history, and respect. Those who take it without understanding will lose it. The king's system is perfect." Amir felt a sense of humility. The gold was a reward for patience and intelligence, not ambition. Amir took out his notebook and sketched the chest, the symbols, and the alcove. He recorded everything carefully. The treasure itself would remain in the chamber, but the knowledge of its location and the instructions for moving it safely were now part of human history. Amir understood that the true value of the gold was not in its wealth, but in the story it told about the king, the Watchers, and the planning that spanned centuries. They spent the rest of the day exploring the chamber further. Omar showed Amir secret alcoves and platforms used by the Watchers to move the treasure when necessary. Each area was designed to hide chests, store gold temporarily, or guide it along the hidden paths. Amir realized that the vanished gold had been preserved and protected flawlessly. The mystery was solved, but the ingenuity of the system amazed him. As the sun began to set, Amir and Omar rested in the chamber. They lit a small fire and ate quietly, reflecting on their discovery. Amir felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The vanished gold had been found, not by force or luck, but by patience, observation, and respect for history. He realized that this journey had taught him more than any treasure could. It had taught him the value of careful study, the importance of following signs, and the wisdom of those who came before. Amir made a decision. The treasure would remain in the chamber, protected by the hidden passages and the symbols of the Watchers. He would return to the village and share the story of the vanished gold, the crypt, and the hidden paths. The villagers would learn about the king, the Watchers, and the lessons of patience and intelligence. The gold itself would stay hidden, as the king had intended, but its story would live on for generations. Before leaving the chamber, Amir carefully closed the chest lids and ensured all symbols and platforms were untouched. He marked the paths lightly in his notebook, enough to guide future seekers who could understand the signs. He and Omar retraced their steps, moving carefully along the hidden passages, ensuring that the treasure remained safe. Every mark and symbol was preserved, just as it had been for centuries. By the time they emerged from the desert valley, the stars were shining brightly above. Amir looked back at the crypt and the hidden passages, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. The vanished gold had not disappeared into mystery. It had been protected, preserved, and revealed only to those who understood its history. Amir knew that the story of the treasure would inspire curiosity, wisdom, and respect for generations to come. Amir returned to the village and shared his journey with the elders and the villagers. He told them about the crypt, the watchers, and the hidden paths. He showed them the sketches of symbols and platforms, explaining the intelligence behind the vanished gold. The villagers listened with awe and respect. They understood that the treasure was not just wealth but a lesson in history, patience, and knowledge. The story of the vanished gold became part of the village's history. People told it for years, speaking of Amir's journey, Omar's guidance, and the brilliance of the king and the watchers. The treasure itself remained hidden, safe from those who would not understand. But its story inspired courage, curiosity, and intelligence in those who listened. Amir often returned to the desert valley, studying the carvings, the hidden platforms, and the paths. He knew that the vanished gold was safe, and he felt a sense of fulfillment. The mystery had been solved, not by luck, but by careful observation, knowledge, and respect for history. The gold was no longer lost, and its story became a reminder that patience, wisdom, and courage were the greatest treasures of all.